In November, Barcelona had a bad period in La Liga. After the great start of the season, we suddenly started seeing a team that looked tired, a team that lacked intensity, a team that showed its opponents mercy, just not the same Barcelona as in October anymore. Against Real Sociedad, Celta Vigo and Las Palmas, it even looked like we were watching Xavi's Barcelona from last season again. People were wondering why Barcelona had a drop in form, and for a big part, it was all because of Hansi Flick's midfield. With Frenkie de Jong and Gavi returning, he started struggling to find the right solutions. And with Marc Casado and Dani Olmo even being unavailable in some games, Barcelona's midfield just wasn't the stronghold that it used to be earlier on in the season. But against Mallorca, we saw again how Barcelona's midfield is actually at its best. There is of course a lot of depth and quality in midfield at Barça, but despite that, it is clear that there is a midfield three that just works perfectly. That's why in this video, we'll take a deeper look at Barcelona's ideal midfield three, we'll talk about why it is that good, and we'll also address the situation of some of the other midfielders. So let's just get right to it. So for those of you that didn't already know what Barcelona's ideal midfield three is, well, it's Marc Casado, Pedri and Dani Olmo. But why does this midfield trio work that well? Well, it's all about balance. Every player in this midfield offers you something different. They complement each other perfectly, and overall, that means you've got a midfield that is totally complete. Let's take a deeper look at the importance of Marc Casado first. Marc Casado is the only actual defensive midfielder in the squad, at least the only one that is currently available. What he has, that none of the other midfielders have, is that instinct to always position himself in the right place at the right time. That is what made Busquets so different as well back in the day. People will argue that someone like Gavi has great defensive capabilities, which is definitely true, but he won't cover those spaces in the way that Marc Casado can. This is just a pure matter of instinct and talent. Marc Casado's ability to read the game while defending sets him apart, and if we're not counting the injured Marc Bernal, there is no one who can really replace him. On top of that, he's obviously a huge asset offensively as well. His decision making is great, he knows when to slow down the play and when to speed it up, his press resistance is incredibly underrated, and his passing is just wow. Marc Casado is that type of midfielder who will kill the opponent's defense with one pass. So overall, that is why Marc Casado is so instrumental for Hansi Flick's Barcelona. He really has the same kind of importance that Busquets had back in the day. And even though Hansi Flick does play with a double pivot instead of a pure single pivot, you do still need a midfielder in there who can just make you control the game, both defensively and offensively, because that is exactly what Marc Casado does. Now, next to him there is Pedri. I don't think I need to really say anything here. The best way to realize what Pedri gives you is to watch Barcelona when he's not on the pitch. They will lose more balls in midfield, they won't find openings and attack as easily, they won't play as fluently. I mean, that shows you exactly why Pedri is important for this team. First of all, he's probably Barcelona's most press-resistant player and he simply doesn't lose balls. Then he's also the best in terms of decision making. He's probably just as good as Xavi himself when it comes to that. Also, his passing might be the best of anyone in the team. His vision is unparalleled. Well, that is Pedri for you. He's there to make sure that you control the ball and find openings in attack. Lastly, there's Dani Olmo. As the attacking midfielder, you need someone who can move a lot in between the attackers, who's good at link-up play in the final third, who can shoot from distance, who's kind of two-footed as well, who can pick out creative passes. I mean, that's what Hansi Flick wants out of this player. And Dani Olmo is the only player in Barcelona's squad who's got all of those qualities at the same time. His intelligence in attack is really underrated, the runs he makes, his dribbling even, he's just incredibly complete. So if you combine him in midfield together with Pedri and Marc Casado, you've really got the perfect balance. Marc Casado controls everything, Pedri dictates the play, and Dani Olmo unlocks the attack. But to really understand how good this midfield three is, we need to take a look at the results of Barcelona this season. There have been 5 games in total where Barcelona haven't won. The loss against Monaco in the Champions League, the loss against Osasuna, the loss against Real Sociedad, the draw against Celta Vigo, and of course, the loss against Las Palmas as well. A lot of people will tell you that Barcelona missed Lamine Yamal in these games, but actually they missed their ideal midfield three. Whoa, hold on. They did also miss Lamine Yamal. But people definitely underestimate how important that midfield three is. You see, in none of these games, Hansi Flick chose for a Pedri, Marc Casado, Dani Olmo midfield. Or sometimes he just didn't have the chance to. Against Monaco, it was Eric Garcia, Marc Casado and Pedri. And even before Eric Garcia's red cards, Barcelona lacked fluidity while circulating the ball. Against Osasuna, it was Eric Garcia, Pablo Torre and Pedri, and they lacked control over the game. Against Real Sociedad, it was Frenkie de Jong, Casado and Pedri, and they looked overwhelmed all game long. Against Celta, it was Pedri, Casado and Gavi, but to be honest, it was with Frenkie de Jong and Fermin Lopez on the pitch, and after Marc Casado's red cards that everything really went wrong for Barca. And against Las Palmas, it was Pedri, Gavi and Fermin Lopez, and Barcelona lacked fluidity in midfield. Overall, in every one of those games, the midfield didn't really function properly. But even in other games that Barcelona won, The ones where it was a close game or where Barcelona were lucky were usually the ones where one of the three ideal midfielders wasn't on the pitch. They didn't have Pedri in the narrow 1-0 win against Getafe, they didn't have Dani Olmo in the first half against Real Madrid where they didn't create anything. Those are just some examples. At the same time, in any of Barcelona's best games this season, they did play with a Marc, Casado, Pedri, Dani Olmo midfield. Barcelona's best 3 games of the season, all round, are probably the 7-0 win against Valladolid, the 4-1 away win at Girona, and the 4-1 win at home against Bayern Munich. And Hansi Flick played with the ideal midfield 3 in every one of these games. To be honest, he did play with Fermin Lopez instead of Dani Olmo against Bayern Munich, but on a good day, Fermin can fulfill that role perfectly too. The matter of fact is that Barcelona's midfield this season has been one of the main reasons why they've been that good, and it's been one of the reasons for their struggles in November as well. But in the recent game against Mallorca, where Barcelona dominated most parts of the game, well, Hansi Flick did play with that golden trio in midfield again. But, of course, the season is long and some of these players will need to rest every once in a while. Definitely Pedri. We don't want him to ever get injured again after all of those struggles in the last years. Luckily, there are 2 players that can perfectly replace Pedri whenever he needs some rest. I think that for both Gavi and Frenkie de Jong, Pedri's role is actually the ideal position in midfield. They both don't have the defensive game reading abilities of Marc Casado, which is why you don't want him to be that deep midfielder from the start of a game at least. That is also why in Xavi's Barcelona 2 years ago, Sergio Busquets still had such a crucial impact. A Pedri, Gavi, Frenkie midfield just wasn't realistic. At the same time, they both can't really play as that attacking midfielder either. They don't have the shooting qualities that Dani Olmo or Fermin Lopez have, and they don't have the same kind of runs into the box. Or maybe I'm just underestimating Frenkie de Jong here. He is actually really versatile, and he has already had some more attacking roles at Barcelona too in the past. But at the end of the day, for both of them, the ideal position is that Pedri role. And I know, it sucks, because that kinda means that Pedri, Gavi and Frenkie de Jong have to compete for one spot in that midfield. Of course, Hansi Flick can make substitutions later in the game that allow them to play together, but in general, they do have to compete for one spot. You just can't play them in any of those other 2 roles if you want your midfield to be at its best. Gavi's main assets are his press resistance and his ability to aggressively put pressure on the opponent while defending. That's something that you will best see if he plays in that role. Frenkie de Jong's main strengths are his passing, his ability to run forward with the ball, and his press resistance. He's kind of similar to Pedri, but compared to him, he's not as good at decision making and dictating the pace of the game. If Pedri and Frenkie de Jong have to compete for one single spot, then that is just bad news for Frenkie de Jong. And with his whole contract situation, that's why I wouldn't be surprised if this were to be Frenkie's last season at Barcelona. Of course, you would say the same for Gavi, but I feel like Gavi is more committed to Barcelona, and he is also still only 20 right now. He still has the potential to become better and to eventually find his place in this team in the coming years. The future looks brighter for him than for Frenkie de Jong. Because Pedri right now is just not losing his place in that midfield. He's just way too crucial. And even though Gavi and Frenkie might be world class too, they cannot have the same impact on the game that Pedri has. But what about Dani Olmo? What if he needs some rest? Well, as you already know, Fermin Lopez is the solution here, or Pablo Torre. He might also still have a future at Barcelona, and he hasn't been bad whenever he's gotten opportunities this season. This is the one position where Barcelona really don't lack depth. Even Pedri can play in this role. The only problem with that is that makes you lose Pedri in the other role, which has its consequences for Barcelona's general control in midfield. But apart from Pedri, we also have to mention La Masia here. This is probably the position where La Masia has the highest amount of talented players right now. Tony Fernandes, Guille Fernandes, Noah Darvish, Quim Juniens. If Hansi Flick ever wants to give them a chance again like he did in preseason, then this position would be great for all of them. Nevertheless, Dani Olmo is still Barcelona's best option here. His shooting, dribbling, passing, link-up play, and even the fact that he's good with both feet, that's a unique set of qualities that only he really has. But what if Marc Casado isn't available? Well, in that case, Barcelona have a problem. Without Marc Casado, Barcelona just don't really have a player who is perfect for that role. Frenkie de Jong and Gavi cannot cover those spaces while defending like he can, and Pedri won't really do that either. Eric Garcia might be able to do that, but he won't offer you the same qualities as Casado on the ball. So when Marc Casado isn't available, Barcelona automatically have a tough game ahead of them. It's really unfortunate that Marc Bernal is out injured for the season, because with him, Barcelona would have suddenly had 2 separate Busquets replacements. However, there is still one player that does fit this role like a glove, and I'm talking about Pau Prim. Pau Prim is a natural single pivot with all of the qualities that you would expect from a natural single pivot. He's absolutely crucial in Barcelona Athletic's lineup right now, so maybe Hansi Flick just doesn't want to take away too much quality from them. But if Marc Casado ever isn't available for multiple games, it might be time to give Pau Prim that chance. So overall, that is the midfield situation at Barcelona right now. There is a very clear ideal midfield 3, and in any game so far where Barcelona have played with that Casado, Pedri, Dani Olmo trio, they've won. Together with Lamine Yamal, these 3 midfielders are Barcelona's most important players right now. Pedri and Dani Olmo do have some solid backup options for them, but if we're talking about that deep midfielder role, then Barcelona are really tight in that area. Marc Casado is irreplaceable right now. It's as simple as that. And if he would ever get injured, then we'll see Hansi Flick struggle with the same kind of midfield problems as Xavi last season. So let's just hope that that doesn't happen and that Marc Casado, Pedri and Dani Olmo can stay injury-free this season. You might have been doubting Barcelona in November, but I hope that Hansi Flick now realizes what his ideal midfield looks like, because then December would be a great month for Barca. So that was it for today's video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and feel free to share your own opinion in the comments down below. And of course, Força Barça, and have a good day.